Hello and welcome to another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear. We're here with another innovator interview, and I'm your host, Mitch Ratcliffe. Thanksgiving's coming up, and we're lucky to have Sandra Ann Harris, who is the founder and president of Ecolunchboxes.com, as well as the author of a new book, Say Goodbye to Plastic, A Survival Guide to Plastic-Free Living, which is out and available now, as well as a contributor of an article about great ways to reduce plastic use and waste at Thanksgiving that's live on Earth911 today. Sandra, welcome. How are you?
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me, Mitch.
Well, it's a pleasure. Now, let's talk about your entrepreneurial activities. You have launched a company that makes plastic-free food storage products and utensils that are reusable as well. It's called Ecolunchboxes.com. And in particular, I like your metal lunchbox packaging. It looks like the stackable Indian lunch boxes that people carry all over India. And here in the States, it's not something that we're accustomed to, but you've chosen to use silicone lids rather than the metal lids. Why silicone? Why is that a good choice?
Yeah, good noticing with the Tiffins. I'd like to think that the concept of a plastic-free food container is a new idea, but actually it's a really old idea. And as you mentioned, the stainless steel containers originally were used in India and actually all over the world. I mean, we're all familiar with bento boxes as well. And so we do sell containers that are stainless steel bases paired with stainless steel lids. And that's our Eco Lunchbox Classic line. And those are awesome and highly recyclable. What you're asking about is our Blue Water Bento collection. And these containers have molded silicone lids on top of stainless steel bases. Silicone we think is a much better choice than plastic because it's not petroleum based primarily. And then the other upside about silicone is if it were to be lost in the environment, it's not going to break down into little bits and start to accumulate as microplastic in our oceans and potentially be eaten by wildlife. So silicone provides a great no leak option for people who are seeking to say goodbye to plastic without the toxic downsides of BPA and other estrogen mimicking chemicals and the environmental hazards that come with trash like plastic being lost in the environment. So we chose to use that, and until there's something better, we think it's the best option. The other upside to talk about is, unfortunately, as many of us have come to realize, a lot of plastic, even if you put it in the recycling bin, it doesn't end up being recycled. It ends up being buried or incinerated. And if silicone were to face incineration, unlike plastic, it's not toxic when it burns. It's inert. And so that's also an upside. So it's this constant balancing act between looking at what materials are available to us and, all of their aspects and trying to constantly steer towards the safest course, not only for humans, but, for our planet as well.
Well, I also like the textile lunch bags that you're making and these utensils that are made of natural materials or steel. I particularly like the Hay Straw 100 pack. So thinking about that, the aggregate impact of making a switch to reusable packaging for carrying a lunch or any kind of portable meal, switching to lunch bags that are reusable, switching to utensils that are biodegradable when they must be thrown away. How much can somebody reduce their waste footprint by bringing their own lunch to work or school in reusable containers?
Right. Yeah. And this is something that we looked at from the very beginning when I started Eco Lunchbox in 2008. I came to mission-based entrepreneurship by way of investigative journalism. So I'm a very curious sort, and I do like to measure things. And so one of the first things that we did was to answer that question: how much waste can a typical American family avert from use and disposal if they use reusables, reusable lunchboxes, reusable bottles, reusable utensils, reusable napkins? And so we created a massive spreadsheet, looking at if 2 kids and 1 adult pack lunch 180 days a year. Now, that's the number of days in a school year. Things are a little different right now, but I'm guessing that kids will return to school. So we used 180 days of packing a lunch outside the home, and we determined that a typical American family that used reusables instead would save 3,240 pieces of trash. And then we took it a step further and we looked at, okay, what if that family was buying things in bulk instead of buying all the pre-packaged snacks, foods, yogurts, applesauces, and packed the food into reusable containers themselves and paid less per ounce? What would the cost savings be? Not just the number of pieces of trash. And we calculated that family would save over $453 every year, because that's what they were spending basically to buy trash. So there are various ways to get people engaged in the zero waste, plastic free movement. And for some people, it's about passion for their environment. For other people, it's about protecting their own health and the health of their children. And for some people, it's their pocketbook. They just want to save money. So we tried to create, a lot of access points for our community by studying quantitatively what the upsides are for these shifts in habits to reusables that we're advocating. And we also measure the carbon footprint, and I'd be happy to share about that.
How much of a difference does it make in terms of carbon?
Well, yeah, when you think about plastic, sometimes we don't always link it to global warming and carbon footprint. But going back to something that I said earlier, since a lot of plastic ends up being incinerated, well, what happens when things are burned? CO2, right? So a few years ago, we were working with a group of MBA students with a sustainability focus. And I asked them, how can we quantitatively measure from a CO2 carbon footprint standpoint the benefit to families who are choosing to reuse rather than buying disposables? And so they pointed me to an approach that the US EPA has developed called the WARM model. So it's the waste diversion model, and we were able to calculate the number of lunchboxes in use by our user community and the tons of trash that they were averting from use and disposal, and then apply metrics developed by the US EPA to determine that every year the Ecolunchbox user community, by pressing into action hundreds of thousands of lunchboxes and not using and discarding trash, offsets the equivalent of 9 million pounds of coal burned. So that would be the CO2e is what they call it. It would also be equivalent to the carbon sequestered by 139,000 tree seedlings grown over 10 years. Or 1 billion smartphones charged. So it can light up our imagination and really empower us to make changes when we think about how all of these little drops in the bucket of our small actions can kind of roll up into this massive impact. So I'm a big fan of measuring and quantitatively looking at how these softer habits can be so impactful.
Well, and we completely agree that these small things can add up, and it's important that we start to think of it in terms of the measurement rather than simply this intuitive sense that we're doing better, but we're actually understanding as we progress towards sustainability where we can improve even more is critical to that evolution of our thinking. So now let me ask you about Say Goodbye to Plastic, your survival guide for plastic-free living. It's your new book. How long have you been plastic-free, and does that mean you don't use any plastic?
Yeah, for me, when I talk about the plastic-free lifestyle, it's like setting your GPS.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you going? Where are you steering towards? And for me, I'm living a plastic-free lifestyle because I'm constantly steering towards saying goodbye to plastic and eliminating as much plastic as I can from my life. Every day, everything that I do, it's a lens that I use to approach my life. It doesn't mean that I'm not using plastic.
Uh-huh.
I'm not bursting your bubble. I mean,
No, you're still on a journey. Everybody's on a journey.
It's a journey. Yeah. And that's what this book that I wrote, Say Goodbye to Plastic, a survival guide for plastic-free living is. It's, hey guys, wherever you are on your journey, whether you've been at it since the early 2000s, like I have, when I came face to face with a ton of plastic in my son's preschool and said, whoa, what's going on here? This is ridiculous. And began on my journey to create Ecolunchbox and live with as little plastic as possible, or whether you're new to the whole idea of saying goodbye to plastic and trying to swap out everyday items like a toothbrush, like your detergent bottle that you use for your laundry, and you're just sort of locked up going like, okay, I've always done it this way. How do I do it in a plastic-free way? So living the plastic-free lifestyle, again, it's like GPS. It's like voting again and again with your actions and with your pocketbook for choices that don't involve plastic. It's sending a message out to the world and modeling for everyone around you that you care about our planet and that you're going to do the best you can. It's not about perfection. It's not about, bragging that you're doing it better than everyone else. It's a journey and evolution. So that's the tone that I take in my book, Say Goodbye to Plastic. It's joyful, it's embracing, it's not judgy. I mean, we've seen on Instagram pictures of influencers that are, so inspirational, frankly, who maybe have only used, one mason jar worth of plastic trash,
Right.
over a whole year. And we look at it and we just go, oh my gosh, I could never do that. That is not the feeling that I'm trying to inspire in my readers, I should say. I'm trying to get my readers to think I can do that.
Mm-hmm. What are 3 things that you would suggest somebody do this week to send that message in their life to change their dependence on plastic?
Well, I guess the first thing I would suggest is focus on what you can do, not what you can't do. I mean, and that's especially true during pandemic times. I mean, so many of us were practicing plastic-free habits out in the world prior to the pandemic, and that was sort of our on-ramp to zero-waste living, to bring our own bags, to bring our own coffee cups, to zero-waste shop using tear weights. There were all of these things that many of us were enjoying doing that now we can't do. So it's easy to get kind of locked up and sort of feel like, oh, it's just so hopeless. We were getting on a good roll and now, we can't do it. So wait a minute, yes, that's all true, but there's a lot we can do much closer to home. In fact, inside our own homes. So the way I've written the book is to break down our homes into a room by room guide for what people can do in every room of their house. So the first thing is focus on what you can do, not what you can't do. And then secondly, don't overwhelm yourself by trying to do everything at once. I suggest that people pick one room to start in. For me, it was
a great way to keep it to be manageable too. Yeah.
To keep it manageable. And if you focus your efforts on one room and you weed out the plastic, you're going to start to feel like you're getting traction and you're going to feel the sense of satisfaction. So identify your room and do an audit. Figure out what's in there that's made of plastic, make a list, a hit list, and decide what you're going to knock out. And then Thirdly, decide what your approach is. So there are a couple of options when you're trying to reduce your dependence on plastic. You can go Marie Kondo style. She's the one who wrote the book, The Magic Art of Tidying Up. And you can do, a big purge all at once, donating things, repurposing things, just wholesale switching things up. Or the approach that I took was weeding things out. So as things wore out and I needed to replace them, I would pause. I wouldn't just reorder what I had always been using. I would think, what could I use instead of, for example, the dishwasher pods, which seem to be okay with the bioplastic covering, and you just pop them in there. And I would research, for example, again, the dishwasher pods. Well, lo and behold, the bioplastics, are not melting. They're getting through our wastewater systems. They're getting out into our oceans. What's a better choice? So what I came up with is old-fashioned powdered detergent sold in a cardboard box that can be recycled. So that's just one example. Then you look at your sponges. You look at your kitchen utensils. Or if you're in the bathroom, start with your toothpaste tube. If you're not going to use toothpaste in a plastic tube, what's it going to be? So those are the top three ideas that I have for folks that want to embark on a journey of plastic-free living.
That's great. Now let's turn to the article that is live on Earth911 today as well. It's Goodbye Plastic Thanksgiving Tips. And you raise a number of important points around this cherished holiday that produces a ton of waste, both stuff we throw away, plastic utensils and so forth, and also a lot of food waste. You have some great ideas, such as putting the trash can out and making composting obligatory for your guests, that are going to help people rethink what they do during the holiday to reduce their waste. What kind of ideas do you suggest we apply as we prepare for Thanksgiving?
Well, first thing is set it as an intention. I want to have a plastic-free, zero waste Thanksgiving celebration. I mean, it sounds silly, but it's not going to happen by accident, right?
Well, let me ask you a question. You also point out that you have to tell your guests that. How would you tell your guests in the invitation that you're going to try to be plastic-free? I'd love to hear that.
Right. You put it in the invitation. You're like, hey, guys, this year I'm going to be doing a plastic-free, zero waste Thanksgiving, and I'd love everyone to help. Could you bring whatever potluck contributions you have, if you're lucky enough this year to be able to have a potluck, I should say, but, for friends or whoever you're getting together with, even if it's outdoor, if you're, living in an area where the weather will accommodate that. Anyhow, you'd say, bring everything on reusables. Please don't bring, big box, huge plastic trays with covers into my home. We're going to be recycling. It's going to be fun. If you have any questions, let me know. And if you're doing an outdoor gathering, you can even go so far as to say, I'd rather not do a bunch of dishes, and I'm not going to be serving things on disposable paper plates. So bring your whole setup, bring your plates, bring your forks, bring your own wine goblets. This is a team sport. No one can, become plastic free in their home without the cooperation of their own family members and
Absolutely. Their well, and it's incredible how much food waste we have at Thanksgiving. For instance, 40 million pounds of mashed potatoes and 30 million pounds of stuffing are thrown away, along with 172 million pounds of turkey every year. So you are also encouraging people to think about how they dispose of this and to plan the meal to be the right size. That's pretty important, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, especially this year when there's so much food insecurity, it would be a real shame to be overspending on food, throwing a bunch of it away, and then having it accumulate in our landfills and then create a bunch of methane gas. I mean, where's the upside in that? No, right size your meal. Maybe you want to just cook enough for the meal itself and not even do leftovers. But if you do want to do leftovers, let's not get excessive. Right. What can you actually store in your refrigerator? What's going to fit? What are you actually going to eat? Everything when it comes to plastic free zero waste living has to do with mindfulness and planning ahead and setting intentions and thinking about how do I want this to go?
Well, I think that's a great place to conclude this conversation because people should go read that article and pick up a copy of your book. Sandra, I want to thank you for taking time to talk with Earth 911 today.
Thank you. It was really a pleasure.
Well, folks, Sandra Ann Harris is the author of Say Goodbye to Plastic, A Successful Guide to Plastic-Free Living, and, of course, the founder and president of Ecolunchboxes.com. You can also find the book at Ecolunchboxes.com. And check out the new article that she published with us on Earth 911 about reducing your plastic use and food waste at Thanksgiving. Folks, this is Earth 911, Sustainability in Your Ear. We're going to be back with another interview soon. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, take care of one another, and take care of the planet.